In the year 628 AD, the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius had led an army to the Persian capital Ctesiphon. There he found a treasury of an item that was incredibly sweet. The Persian called it shakar. Had Heraclius asked where this sweet substance truly came from, the answer would have pointed to far beyond Persia, to India, where this remarkable substance had first been invented, refined, and perfected centuries earlier. This is the story of how ancient India gave sugar to the world. Our story starts with the sugarcane plant itself. There is ample evidence to suggest that this plant is native to the Indian subcontinent. And if we look at later Vedic texts like Atharva Ved, Vajrasaneyi Samhita, or Taitreyi Samhita, there we find the term Ikshu. Ikshu is the Sanskrit name of the sugarcane plant. By around 6th century BC, the cultivation of sugarcane as a crop was common in Gangetic plains. If we look at early Buddhist texts, they regularly mention sugarcane as a crop growing in the fields. And one of the descriptions of a prosperous country like Madhya Desh included the picture of fields full of sugarcane plants. In Kautilya's Arthashastra too, sugarcane is mentioned in the list of principal crops that was cultivated at that time. But Kautilya remarks that sugarcane is the least profitable of crops because it is subject to various evils and requires much care and expenditure. On the other hand, Manu in his Dharmashastra notes the similarity between garlic and sugarcane in the way it was cultivated. By this, Manu probably meant how both sugarcane and garlic were not cultivated normally by sowing seeds. Instead, they are grown from the offsets. If we look at Indian literature, we find that there were multiple varieties of sugarcane. Charak, for instance, mentions two varieties, Poundraka and Vamshaka. But Shushrut gives by far the most elaborate list. He mentions 12 different varieties of sugarcane plant. The cultivation of this plant, which produces sweet juice and was common in ancient India, also caught the imagination of the Greeks. The first Greek writer who talked about sugarcane was a person called Nearchus. Nearchus was one of the Greek officers of Alexander's army, and although his original work does not survive, a later work quotes him and tells us that Nearchus had mentioned that in India there were canes from which honey is made. But what was surprising for Nearchus, who was familiar with only honey, was that this honey of the Indians was made without bees. This confusion of equating honey with sugarcane juice persisted. And if we look at Megasthenês' writing, he tells us that there are tall reeds in India that are sweet by nature. And he gives an interesting theory of how this sweetness in the plant comes from. According to Megasthenês, the sugarcane plant was sweet because of a naturally cooking process. He believed that as the cane grew, it sucked up water from the soil. Then the intense heat of the sun, which was common in India, warmed that water so much that it actually cooked inside the plant. According to him, this heat is what transformed the plain water into a thick, sweet syrup while the plant was still in the ground. So as you can see, the Greeks were quite puzzled by the fact that sugarcane produces incredibly sweet juice, and they tried to explain this phenomena in their own way. Now coming to the question of how from the sugarcane plant juice was extracted, we find that manually operated or animal operated machines were used in ancient India. And these machines were called Mahajant in Pali or Mahayantra in Sanskrit, and another name of these machines was Kolluka. It is from this term Kolluka the modern term Kolhu comes from. The Yagnavalkya Bhashya also refers to the sheds where these machines were installed. And when we look at the manufacturing of sugarcane from the sugarcane juice, it appears that this was a significant industry. Because in Kautilya's Arthashastra, this work is listed as an important work. Now, the technique of manufacturing sugarcane from sugarcane juice, it appears evolved quite early in ancient India. And generally, this involved evaporating the water from the sugarcane juice by boiling. And as the water evaporates, different kinds of sugar were obtained. In ancient Indian texts, we learn of 5 different kinds of such products. These included Phanit, Gud, Matsyandika, Khand, Sharkara. If we start with Phanit, it appears that this product was obtained at the early stages of the manufacturing process. Shushrut tells us that this is a variety of sugar, which suggests that this was not a very high quality or refined sugar. Now from Phanit, we move to Gud. Interestingly, in the later Vedic texts, the term Gud appears, but here it is used to refer to balls, which suggests that in a later Vedic period, people knew about sugarcane, but they had not yet mastered the art of making sugar from sugarcane juice. However, by the time of 6th century BC, the term gud or gud was used to refer to molasses or sugar. And interestingly, it appears that the name Gaud, which is the name of a region in Bengal, was derived from the term gud. This is what Panini tells us in his Ashtadhyayi. Now after Gud, the next preparation was Matsyandika. It is not entirely clear what made Matsyandika different from Gud. There is some evidence to suggest that Matsyandika was a special type of sugar that was produced in Gaud, which is in Bengal. And there are other evidence which suggest that Matsyandika was somewhere between Gud and crystallized sugar. After Matsyandika, we have Khand. This was by far the most common variety of sugar that was used in ancient India. And interestingly, the English word candy traces its root from this Sanskrit word. After Khand, we have Sharkara or crystallized sugar. Sharkara, according to many ancient texts, was by far the purest and refined form of all preparations from the cane juice. If you look at later Vedic texts, here the term Sharkara appears, but here it is used to mean gritty particles or gravel, which suggests that when ancient Indians learned the technique of manufacturing crystallized sugar, they gave it the name of Sharkara because of its granular consistency. The use of the term Sharkara to refer to crystallized sugar appears in the Jatakas, Panini's Ashtadhyayi and Kautilya's Arthashastra, which suggests that by around 500 BC, ancient Indians had mastered the art of making crystallized sugar. From later texts, for example Bana's Harcharit, we learn that Sharkara was divided into 2 distinct categories: Patal Sharkara and Karkat Sharkara. Patal Sharkara was an inferior variety of sugar and this was pale red in color. In villages, we are told that Patal Sharkara was mixed with water and then filled in jars. These jars were then immersed in wells in order to cool them. So this was a type of a sweetened sugary drink. It was from ancient India the technique of manufacturing sugar spread to different parts of the world. In the West, it was the Persians who first learned this technique. The Persians called Sharkara shakkar. And when the Persians were conquered by Arabs in 7th century AD, the Arabs learned this technique. The Arabs called sugar sukkar. Now, from the Arabs, the know-how of manufacturing sugar was transferred to Egypt, Morocco, Sicily, and Spain. And from there, it spread to Europe. In fact, the word sugar has its origin in the Sanskrit word sharkara. If we look at the Eastern world, the credit of introducing the technique of making sugar to China goes to Hsuan-Tsang, the famous Chinese traveler who visited India in 7th century AD. When Hsuan-Tsang introduced sugar to China, they called it shimi, which meant stone honey. Later, based on the information of Hsuan-Tsang, a Chinese ambassador was dispatched from the Tang court. This Chinese ambassador was Wang Xuan's. When Wang Xuan's returned from his Indian trip, he brought with him two Indian workers who were skilled in the manufacturing of sugar. It was from these Indians the Chinese learned the art of making stone honey. If you like this video, do subscribe. Thank you for watching.